Hello and welcome to Frugal Over 50. I'm Amy and I'm happy to welcome you here today to my channel where we talk about everything related to frugality, minimalism, and intentional living, especially aimed at the needs of the mature woman. So if you found us here, thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you'll subscribe. On today's video, I want to talk about a subject that I would probably ordinarily do as a Wednesday one take. If you're new here, check out that series. It's lots of fun and lots of people get involved in the comments as well. But I have a fairly busy weekend coming up, and so I really wanted to just sit down and talk to you a little bit. I want to talk about a subject that is difficult to discuss on camera, but that I think is important because it affects a lot of us as we get older especially, and it affects every area of our lives. And this is the subject of grief. When you think about grief, you think about what it does to your sense of frugality, your sense of minimalism, and to your ability to live intentionally. It's a tough subject. This is a very personal subject to me, and so this video will necessarily be very personal. In the months before I started my YouTube channel, my dearly beloved father passed away at the age of 86 after a short illness. He had been healthy and he knew that his time was coming. He was 86 and had some health problems, and he was well prepared. And he left me and my brother well taken care of. He had extensive documentation giving us passwords to everything, contact numbers and names for everybody we needed to talk to. He had told us in years gone by that he planned to spend all of his retirement money taking care of himself, and he wasn't planning to leave anything to us, but he also wouldn't be a burden to us. Well, he managed his money well enough that he was able to actually leave each of us a reasonable sum of cash along with a whole lot of grief. So one of the things that I really appreciate about how my dad lived intentionally and frugally and minimally in his last years was that he kept a record of every transaction. He did this old school in a checkbook. And he also was very careful to leave very clear instructions for the people who would come after him. He left lots of detail, and he left us in a very sort of easy to read, easy to access way. Whenever I would visit my father in the last 5 to 10 years of his life, he would show me the place where his documentation was in his house, and he also sent me a copy, which I didn't necessarily keep updated, but at least I had a version of what he had. He also arranged his retirement finances so that if he did have any left at the end and it went to his heirs, it would go in such a way as to not create a huge tax burden. So he set a great example for me, and he is actually one of the reasons that I started the channel shortly after he passed away, was because I want to be like my dad. I want to be able to go through the remaining part of my life very carefully, thinking about how money affects everything in my life. And my dad did a really good job at that. My grief over losing my dad is significant, and it affects everything that I do. Some of the things that I do as a result are really, really positive and have to do with being much more frugal. This has been a much more frugal year because I am looking back at my dad's example and thinking, I want to be like that. I talked in a previous video about how my parents kind of crowd-funded our lives. If you want to see, I'll put the link to the video up above and in the show description below. But then later he got a job that turned out to be pretty stable. And the combination of various ways of earning an income. He grew up as a farm boy on a farm, and then he went to the Army, and so he had the VA, what is that called? The GI Bill is what they call it, to go to college. And then he worked as a missionary, and then he worked as an engineer. So he had a really varied life. See, I'm still talking about him in the present tense. It's been that recent. And in all through his life, the sort of through line financially was to be frugal and to be careful. And this is a lesson that I am still learning from him, and I hope to be learning all of my life. I hope to be able to implement some of the things that he did right away. I'm thinking this summer, when I have a little bit more time, for instance, I'm going to sit down and do the thing that he did. He had a several page long document of all of his accounts, all of his passwords to all of his social media, all of these things. I'm going to go ahead and do that and then just keep it updated. And he kept it in a safe place, of course. So one result of my grief over losing my dad is that I've decided to get more organized about my finances, more intentional about my finances, and more frugal. The other thing is that I have decided to become more minimal in my lifestyle. And so over time, I'm going to even get rid of the house that I live in and follow the kind of life that I'm really looking forward to living, with lots more traveling and a much smaller place to live, if I even have a permanent place to live for the first few years. Now, one of the things that those are all positive things. One of the things that is not quite so easy to talk about is the effect of grief on everyday life. I would love to say that all of these inspiring things come with a significant burst of energy, for instance, and the ability to really put them into practice with courage and with joy. But that's really not the case. I feel very sad a lot of the time because he was a great guy and I miss him. I'd love to tell him about my YouTube channel and tell him how I'm talking about him and how much he's inspired me. It would mean a lot, and I know he would appreciate it. And I know he'd be proud of me. And it's hard. I have just recently discovered that the reason I'm getting so far behind in a lot of areas of my life, like this looks pretty good, but my house is not clean. I'm sort of keeping up with my job. I'm sort of keeping up with YouTube. Actually, thank you for being here in spite of the fact that most of my videos are very lightly edited, if at all. I tend to just sort of put it up there and hope for the best. And it's because I don't have the energy to do a whole lot. I realized specifically this weekend, as I was saying, that I have about 25% of my usual energy. And so I only have like 2 or 3 really fully edited videos up on YouTube. I'm just talking into the camera, putting up something on the beginning, something on the end, and putting it up there and sort of hoping for the best. And it's going all right so far, but that's why my videos are so lightly edited and don't include a lot of cuts and don't include scenes around town and that sort of thing. Those are things that I'd like to do, but I just don't have the energy. And I think it's important to talk about that because a lot of what I feel like we're asked to do when we want to make changes in our finances, a lot of what we're asked to do takes a lot of energy. It takes a fair amount of drive. It takes a lot of intention. And sometimes I just don't have that. I just sit and watch YouTube videos or read a book or watch a British murder mystery or just sit. I'm tired a lot, and I know that I will bounce back. I've talked to people who've lost elderly parents, and they talk about how it takes time, but you do bounce back and you'll always miss them. And I know that's the case. But one of the big effects of grief on me is that everything has just slowed down. And so the things that I want to do, I'm taking it a little bit more slowly. In some areas, of course, I have really sped it up. I went ahead and started the YouTube channel, and I'm working on being more frugal. But it's just a weird sort of juxtaposition of feeling like I've got to hurry up and get everything in place and start living like my dad. And on the other hand, feeling like I just want to sit. I'm just tired, I'm sad, or I'll be in the middle of something and I'll just get hit with a wave of grief. And I think these are important things to experience in life. I would be horrified if I didn't feel these things, but it's hard. And I also think that it's necessary to talk about because it's something that we all go through. I'm sure that everybody who's watching this has gone through some form of grief or loss that has really slowed you down or hit you in the gut or traumatized you or otherwise affected you. And some of you have gone through deeply traumatic losses. And it can really slow down the way that we think. And we live in a world of go, go, go. And grief really asks us to just sort of sit back and let the world wash by for a while. And sometimes that's hard when we think about finances, because if we let the world wash by for a while, we may discover that we've gotten into some sort of chaos, or we may discover that we were already in chaos and we don't really have the energy to make it better, or we don't have the resources to make it better. So it's a tough, deep, spirally kind of a subject. I'm thankful to be in a situation where things are going well, and the big problem is that I miss my dad, and I wish that I could tell him that things are going well. I don't know if you want to share your grief in the comments. It's not necessary. That's a very personal thing. But I do want to acknowledge that grief and loss affect every part of our lives. And when we're working to be frugal, to be minimal, and to be intentional, grief may inspire us, as it has done with me, and it may also slow us down, also as it has done with me. And both things are true. I miss my dad. He was a good guy. I wish you all could have met him. I would have loved to have interviewed him, but I hadn't started my channel then. So I'll just tell you that he's part of the reason that I'm here, and he's part of the reason that I cyber know all of you. Thank you so much for being here. If you like this kind of content, even though this one's been kind of a sad one, if you like talking about frugality, minimalism, and intentional living, and in this case, the real needs of the mature woman, then I hope that you'll subscribe, give this video a like, and click the notification bell so that you'll be notified first of new videos. Thank you so much for being here. I look forward to seeing you already in the next video. Bye.